guys, Sneha and Vinod here, and today let us move you out of your camera's auto mode. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, click on the logo on the bottom left and you will be able to subscribe to our channel. So you are all excited to get your first DSLR and then you left your camera on the automatic mode because you didn't know how to use the manual or semi-automatic modes. Don't worry, we will let you know about these modes in this video.
So this is Canon 700D, where we have the different modes like the creative mode and the automatic modes. The automatic modes are the scene, the sports, this is the macro mode, the landscape mode, this is the beauty portrait, and this is the creative auto, and this one is the no flash mode, which you use for night shots, and this is the automatic mode. Trust me, we have never used these automatic modes, because why should we buy a DSLR to use these automatic modes? Your phone works the best, it clicks great pictures.
Program mode is like telling your camera, hey, don't turn on the flash but give me all the exposure parameters. So it's like basically you're leaving the camera to do all the exposure settings for you. This works really well, in a dynamic environment. So if you have like kids running around in a park and you want to take photographs of them, this mode will definitely work better for you. Like I said, the camera gives all the exposure triangle parameters, but you have the option to choose the exposure compensation, and also you can increase or decrease the ISO in this mode.
So before we move ahead with the other modes used in this DSLR, let me tell you briefly what is meant by exposure compensation. Most of the camera meters are fairly accurate, but sometimes the cameras tend to overexpose or underexpose the image, and that leads to a lot of highlights and a lot of shadows sometimes too. So the best example when you can see this situation is when you are photographing in the snow. The exposure tends to show as grey instead of pure black or pure white. So the exposure compensation present in your DSLR makes this accurate. When you want to make your image darker, the exposure compensation needs to be negative. And when you want your image to be brighter, you need to compensate the exposure towards positive. And when you are using this exposure compensation in the aperture priority mode, the camera will compensate the shutter speed accordingly before you take a picture.
So let's talk about the first semi-automatic mode, which is the shutter priority mode, or TV, written on your Canon cameras. It also means time value. So as the name suggests, the priority is given to the shutter. So basically, if you know the shutter speed and you're not bothered about the ISO and the aperture, you can set the shutter speed and let the camera's meter decide the aperture and ISO. So a best example would be if you're photographing a bird in flight and the shutter speed has to be a minimum of 1/2000th of a second. You set the shutter speed at that at 1/2000, and the camera will give you the correct exposure based on the lighting and the environment.
So coming to the aperture priority mode or the AV mode. AV means aperture value mode. So in this mode, you are just telling the camera at what aperture it needs to shoot at. So once you know the depth of field that you need to use, the camera will calculate the shutter speed accordingly for that aperture. This is probably the most popular modes, and this mode can be used mainly for wedding photography, where you will be constantly changing the aperture and you don't have to worry about the shutter or the ISO.
So while you're photographing weddings, like Sneha was saying, with this mode, and you're getting a slow shutter speed and you're photographs are getting blurred out because of camera shake. So you can increase the shutter speed by dialing down the exposure compensation. So if you make it 1 or 2 stops darker, the shutter speed increases. However, this can make add a lot of shadows. So the other option is to increase the ISO. If you increase the ISO, you are adding noise. So likewise, so if you're indoors, you would have seen these wedding photographers. They use bigger lights and a lot of flash. This is because of this particular reason. So they use aperture priority mode, and they give in a lot of light so that you can get the correct exposure and a cleaner image.
Coming to the manual mode, the M which shows on your mode dial. So in this manual mode, the photographer has complete control over the camera, and he does not let the camera choose any of these parameters. And this is one of our favorite modes, and we usually shoot in this mode. Most of the landscape photographers use this mode because when you are very specific about the aperture and the shutter speed, you'll have to use this mode.
So we will suggest you to use this mode as a beginner. You will make a lot of mistakes. You make thousands of them, trust me, but you're going to enjoy the process of learning, using DSLR, using the manual mode. After a couple of months, you will understand and enjoy the beauty of using this mode. Exposure compensation will work in this mode, but it will not affect any of the other parameters like aperture or shutter, like in the aperture or shutter priority modes.
Hope you guys have learned something from this tutorial, and we guys hope that you come out of your comfortable automatic zone and bring about some creativity from your DSLR. So as always, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit like if you have understood something in this tutorial.